Today, the President and the First Lady will honor the Special Forces teams which helped capture former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Peter Ducey joining us. All right, Peter, where is this ceremony going to be held?
At Fort Bragg, Stuart. So President Trump is going to meet this afternoon with the special operators who went in the dark of night on that daring raid to take Maduro out of Venezuela. The next big thing that's going to come out of Venezuela will, of course, be oil. The highest-ranking administration official to visit Venezuela since Maduro's ouster, Christopher Wright, the energy secretary, just went down there, and that has the president saying the following. Relations between Venezuela and the United States have been, to put it mildly, extraordinary. We are dealing very well with President Delcy Rodriguez and her representatives. Oil is starting to flow, and large amounts of money, unseen for many years, will soon be greatly helping the people of Venezuela. The president is also now watching additional naval assets steaming towards the Middle East as he weighs next moves with Iran after yesterday's closed-door meeting with Bibi Netanyahu.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal.
We're also learning now the administration smuggled 6,000 Starlinks into Iran, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. This was during the uprising a few weeks ago when the regime turned off main internet control for most of the protesters. And that was so that the protesters could continue getting the word out that the regime was killing innocent people. Stuart?
All right, Peter, we hear you. Thanks very much indeed. The Munich summit kicks off today in Germany. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the speakers, and she plans to offer, quote, a working-class perspective on U.S. foreign policy. Tammy Bruce is the deputy representative for the U.S. mission to the United Nations and joins me now. With AOC there, are we, as a country, looking like a united country?
Well, absolutely. We're looking like America. There's a bunch of different opinions. We embrace everyone. And it's good for Europe to be reminded that the scourge that destroyed them just in the last century.
These days, you are a diplomat.
Yeah, of course. That's what they call me now. It is important because obviously it's within our living lifetime that the idea of socialism, communism clearly destroyed lives, destroyed countries. It remains as a problem, and it's going to be a good reminder. We've seen over the last 80 years that it is free markets, it's capitalism, and yes, the worker does matter, because individuals matter. And of course, the communist, socialist, Marxist framework denounces the individual, elevates the group, which means individuals really don't matter so much. We've proven that they do, and so welcome aboard.
That was a terrific shift to the evils of socialism. That was really good.
But that's what it is. So you don't want people to not be reminded that it can still exist and that it needs to be pushed back.
Okay, let's talk about Iran.
Yes, sir.
President Trump is putting more pressure on him. He sent a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East, but he thinks things could be resolved in the next month. Tammy, that's a long time to wait when you've got a massive military force on Iran's doorstep.
Well, that military force we've had somewhere through the period of this time, and it's good to shift it back there. This is the power of the president. He wants something to be accomplished with Iran for the sake of American national security and for people everywhere. And that's part of the tool in his tool chest, is reminding people of our military power. Separate from President Trump, that's not necessarily noticed a great deal. Diplomacy works when people know there's an alternative. Diplomacy becomes the thing that everybody wants, things to end peacefully, and to have diplomacy be the primary driver. The president's made that clear, that he wants that. That's what we do at the UN, at the U.S. mission. But people act and react because they know President Trump means what he says.
It's working in Venezuela. We've taken out their president. We now basically control the country and its oil. I think maybe the same thing is going to be applied in Iran. Massive military power, waiting to take action. You do what we say. Well,
we did not remove a president. We removed a man who was masquerading as one. We removed an indicted individual, 2 indicted individuals when it comes to, they were narco terrorists, effectively. We got them out, allowing the Venezuelan people to have a future. The response there with the people has been fantastic. As we've seen, as you'd mentioned, the Iranian protests and the Starlink, that's a great story. But people want to be free no matter where they live. And the negotiations clearly are ongoing. They're fluid, so I'm not going to get ahead of the president or the number of people who are working on that. But there's no doubt that people want to be free. The Middle East wants to be a place that is free and where people can embrace their cultures and not have to worry about terrorism disrupting their lives.
I'm sure you're aware of this, but Iran has been named co-chair of the UN body promoting democracy and women's rights. Look, they're known for oppressing women and slaughtering their own civilians. I call this another UN outrage.
Well, it is. There's a reason as a result that we do not participate in that dynamic. There's a reason why we are working on the reform at the UN, discussing these things. It is obviously absurd. Ambassador Waltz made that point on his social media accounts, that these are things that remind the American people that without our leadership, things go south. The UN recognizes the absurdity as well. It's not just our taxpayers who care about this, but constituents around the world for all the nations are looking at this thinking, what the hell are they doing? We are there to make the difference through the U.S. mission every single day, and that's part of it.
Are you enjoying life these days?
I think I am. I know, and that
Looks
to
like
be
you are.
here with you again, so I appreciate that.
Tammy, you're all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for joining.
Nice to see you.
Appreciate it.